So again, a little bit about myself. Like you heard this morning, I graduated from St. Lawrence College in Child and Youth Worker. Then I went to Griffith University in Australia and graduated with a Bachelor's of Human Services. In October 2021, I graduated from the Adhd Coach Academy with my basic ADHD life certificate, and I'm currently in the advanced program to continue deepening my ADHD coaching abilities and knowledge. I worked at Queen's University for 5 years, working with students with learning disabilities and ADHD, transitioning from elementary to high school to post-secondary. I worked in Old Crow as an EA at Chief Shea Gitlip, and I've been an EA for the last 3 years at Takini Elementary. And in January of this year, I just started my ADHD coaching business, and I am a ridiculously proud father of the 2 cutest kids you've ever seen. They've been gone for over a month in Ontario, and I miss them dearly. I forgot to mention this last time, too. My biggest fear is public speaking, so this should be fun. Again, just a review of my diagnosis. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and I have the combination type, meaning that I struggle with impulsivity, hyperactivity, and inattention. I have a significant learning disability in math. I struggle with generalized anxiety disorder, which means I worry about everything and anything that's possible and under the sun. And I struggle with depression. So, the 3 most important things I learned when I was diagnosed when I was around 11 and 12 years old were that I was stupid, different, and weird. And that was my base knowledge, my base understanding of what this disability meant to me. I'm not going to spend too long on this because we did it this morning. But growing up with disabilities, again, feeling utterly alone, not knowing anybody who had ADHD, nobody understanding what was going on with me. I just felt like I was the only one in the world struggling with this, and it was terrible. Lack of understanding my disability, having teachers ask me what ADHD was, having parents and teachers telling me that ADHD doesn't exist, it's just an excuse for kids to be hyper, added to the confusion and emphasized just how dumb I really was, that I couldn't function like the rest of everybody. Brutal. We went over this again, the fight with medication. I didn't want to depend on medication to be normal. I didn't want to depend on medication to function like my other friends. But with the stimulants, they felt great coming into my bloodstream, but the second they kicked out, I just went into this hard, deep crash and depression every single night, and I hated it. And I started on Ritalin, and I had to take a pill and a half in the morning and then a pill and a half in the afternoon. And I remember at school, I would have to sit by the principal's office and wait for the secretaries to come back so I could take my meds while watching my class go to gym, which was like the only class I thrived in. And I would miss like 30 minutes of it because the secretaries, I don't know what they were doing, but they were late. And so again, just it was just emphasizing on how different and weird I was, and it's not fun. The lack of accommodations, people not understanding that accommodations aren't cheating, or they don't give me advantage. They make me on the same playing field as everybody else. Realizing that we are working at a much lower level than everybody else, being at the same level, being able to finally show the world what we're capable of, what we know, is such a wonderful feeling. I can't tell you the frustration I feel when I know what I want to say in my head and I can't get it out on paper. That is an unbelievably frustrating feeling. And when I'm not accommodated, I get graded on what I'm able to produce, not what I know. And the accommodations, again, like glasses, don't make me see better or make me do better. They put me at an even playing field with everybody else. And the stigma of ADHD being, you're a bad kid, because it comes out as behavior. It comes out as you don't have enough effort. You're not you're not trying to focus. And again, which is all wrong, but just adds on to this false belief that we are stupid and we're not going to go anywhere in life. Okay, this is where it gets fun and exciting. So did you know I have the worst dry mouth in the world, but I came prepared? Oh, it's loud. Sorry. Okay. So did you know ADHD, first and foremost, it is a neurobiological disorder. We can do brain scans and see the difference in people with ADHD and without ADHD. So it right there breaks the myth that ADHD is a lack of effort, a lack of willpower. There is a neurological difference in people with ADHD versus neurotypicals. So what's happening in the ADHD brain is, even though the word hyperactivity is actually in the name, it's actually an underactive brain. So what's happening is that we are deficient. We don't have enough of certain neurotransmitters or chemicals in our brain called dopamine and norepinephrine. In 4 parts of our brain, we are lacking that. And that helps communicate and send messages to our brain. It affects our executive functioning, which is time management, organization, and planning, flexible thinking. And because, and this is, dopamine affects our reward systems in our brain. So it doesn't feel as good to get a reward from us because we don't get those neurochemicals, right? And because our brain is underactive, and our brain always has to stay active and alert, right? So if we're bored or our brain is deficient, it's screaming at us, Aaron, gotta do something, gotta stay active, gotta be alert. Because I don't get that stimulation, that those neurotransmitters in my brain, I have to go looking for them externally. So what do? I fidget. I daydream. I doodle. But do you know what other people can do sometimes? If they're looking for stimulation, they can get into drugs, alcohol, risky sports, risky sexual activity. That all is stimulating and gives us what we're looking for because we don't internally have it. A lot of people get confused as to why we're giving hyperactive kids a stimulant. And this is why. Because the stimulant gives us the stimulation that our brain is craving all the time and we don't have. So that's why it's an underactive brain, and we can, yeah?
When they put you on that Ritalin, does that, do you get hooked on that drug?
No, that's a great question. I was just talking to a coach colleague of mine. Apparently stimulants are one of the highest tested and researched drugs ever. I didn't get hooked. Apparently that's a myth. I'm not an expert in this field at all, but from my understanding, it's a non-addictive, because you don't feel high, right? You feel like everybody else feels. When I take the medication, it's like accommodations. I don't go up here. I'm on the same playing field as everybody else.
Well, the only reason why I asked is because when my son was small, they wanted to start giving him Ritalin because he was a hyper kid.
Mm-hmm.
But in my brain, I just thought, no, I don't want to start my kid on pills, so he'll be hooked on pills for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't fill the prescription, and I never went back to the doctor about it.
Yeah, fair enough, and that's a common concern and a common issue. And again, medication is not my area of expertise, but from my understanding and from what some psychologists have said, is it's the most researched drug out there is stimulants, and the benefit of what it can do for kids can be immense. From my understanding, it's non-addictive. That's and I understand that concern. I hear it quite often. I wish I could do more research and have more information for you right now, but at this time I don't. But that's from my understanding in regards to stimulants. So yeah, it's an underactive brain. There are 3 subtypes of ADHD. A lot of people get confused because it used to be called ADD. So ADHD, there's 3 subtypes. ADHD, mainly inattentive, which is what we used to call ADD. ADHD, hyperactive and impulsive. And then what I have is ADHD combination, which is all 3, the impulsivity, hyperactivity, and inattention. We always look at ADHD like we don't have, like it's a lack of attention, or we don't have attention spans. I have great attention. I just can't sustain it on anything. So it's lack of attention versus sustained attention. I focus on all the wrong things. I'm focusing on people's tattoos and their dresses and their beautiful headbands that they're wearing. That's what I'm thinking in my head, even though I should be focusing on one thing. So I have a great attention. It's just everywhere, and not focused on the one thing that we're supposed to be focusing on, right? An interest-focused brain versus an important-focused brain. So neurotypicals, so people without ADHD, are able to focus on something that's important to them. So for example, say you're sitting or watching this presentation, and hopefully it's not super boring to you, but if you're not interested, there's a part of your brain that you can say, this is important, so I'm going to be able to sit here and concentrate and get what I need from it. But with someone with ADHD, if you're not interested in something, if it's not engaging your brain, it's almost impossible for you to focus because your brain is screaming at you to get the stimulation that you need. But on the other hand, if we're interested in something, we're getting that stimulation and we can dive right into it. I can read about space and music for hours on end, and it annoys the bejesus out of my wife. But then if I go to something like math or something I'm uninterested in, even if I want to learn, my brain is not engaged. And that's where and we'll talk about the paradox of ADHD next because it looks like willpower. Well, how come I can focus on space, but I can't do this homework? It's because it's engaging my brain. It's stimulating my brain where this is not. And I kind of went into this earlier too. It affects every single aspect of your life. Again, we look at it as a school-based disorder, and it's not. It's going to affect your relationships, your romantic relationships, your peer relationships. It's going to affect your finances. It's going to affect your job. It's going to affect every aspect of your life that a lot of people aren't aware of. When I coach some of my clients, some of their reactions are, holy shit, I had no idea this affected me in this way. Yeah, it affects every aspect of your life. So the ADHD paradox, I don't like the word paradox, but the ADHD doesn't make sense, even for the person with ADHD and especially for people who are either watching their kid or clients who have ADHD. So the weaknesses are more intense, but the strengths are much stronger. And that's what I'm talking about. When we're interested in something, we can get right into it and be amazing at it. But then if we're not interested, we suck so hard at it. And that's really hard for someone with ADHD because you're asking yourself, well, why? What's wrong with me? Why can I do this, but I can't do this? And if a teacher or someone is looking at someone with ADHD, it looks like willpower. Because it looks like, yeah, you wanted to focus on this, or you can focus on gaming for hours on end or TV because it's stimulating. But if you take that and put it into something you're not, it's going to look like willpower, and it's not. And this is frustrating on both ends, that your strengths can be so, so good, but your weaknesses are also just terrible. And this is why ADHD is so paradoxical. And hyper-focus versus hypo-focus. When I get playing music, when I get reading into space, I hyper-focus on it. Nothing can distract me from it, except for maybe my screaming kids. But nothing takes my attention away from it. But if I'm not engaged in it, it's called hypo-focus. I can't. No matter how hard I try, I can't focus and retain anything because my brain is screaming at me, and it's again, it's not a choice of will or effort. It's the neurology of ADHD, right? I don't know if anybody noticed, I was back there moving during Yvonne's presentation because I had to. I was interested in what she had to say, but I had to move. And it's not out of disrespect, it's not out of anything like that. It's my body screaming at me, telling me this is what I need to do to be able to focus even just a little bit. And then situational variability, this is also super frustrating. I'm a sports guy. I used to be kind of an athlete in school, and so I like that competition when I'm playing sports. It drives me, it thrives me. But if you take that same situation of competitiveness and put it in the classroom, I crumble. And this is what's called situational variability, right? The environment in which you're in depends on how well we can focus and how well we do. And again, that's super frustrating, right? It's the exact same environment, competitive in sports, competitive in class, but when I crumble and when I thrive. So the environment really influences how we can function and how well we portray what we know. Oh God, I have an embarrassing story of myself for you on this one. So people without ADHD, or what we call neurotypicals, I always have to say this because I can't say the word without it. You are able to put your thoughts, feelings, and ideas into compartments. You're able to compartmentalize your ideas and thoughts. People with ADHD have two gears, which is now versus not now. And this affects everything, right? My first thing is, I look at my phone, I'm like, hey, that's really important, I should respond to this right now. Oh, what's that? I put my phone down, it's not now. It's gone out of my mind, and my friends and family know that I won't text them for maybe a month or two. Not out of disrespect, because it's just not now. And even now is about 4 seconds long. And think about that. Think about that when we're talking about emotion. We know that our executive functioning, which is in the prefrontal cortex of our brain, is lower, and that's where emotional regulation lies. So when you feel an emotion or a thought, we are feeling that in this nanosecond of space and time, and that is so intense, and that is all we can feel. So when we see, people have an overreaction or flip out, it's because I don't even know how to explain that intense emotion in that 4 seconds of time. That is all we feel, and it is overwhelming. And because of the now versus not now, we have a lack of future thinking. Now takes up everything. What I do tomorrow, what I do in 5 minutes, that's not now. I don't think about that. It has very little, it affects me very little of what's going to happen next. And you can see, whatever field you're in, how this can affect the decisions we make, and we can look and be like, why the hell did you do that? You know the consequence is going to be that. They don't know, because it's not now. And there's a lack of future thinking, and we cannot relate to that. And it goes on with not connected to our future selves. So the decisions we make, we cannot see how they're going to affect us in 5 minutes, a year from now, or whatever. For example, this is so silly of me. So my family has a history of colitis, and now, lucky me, I'm starting to struggle with it. So I can't eat dairy or eggs. I went out to have sushi on Saturday, and the people I were with didn't want to eat this last row of sushi, and I wasn't touching it because there was mayo just drizzled all over it. Now, I ate it. I ate it hard. Because in the now, I was like, I'm hungry, I don't want to waste food, I paid for this, I'm going to eat it. And even my friends were like, but Aaron, you can't have dairy or eggs. I was like, don't care. Because I'm not connected to my future self. Now, the cramps that I'm feeling currently and how uncomfortable I am sucks. Do I look back and say, I probably shouldn't have eaten that sushi, Aaron? Yeah. Was it worth it in the moment? 100%. Do I regret it right now? Absolutely. But I was not connected to my future self. I had a presentation 4 days later, and I still ate the bloody sushi. It doesn't matter, because in the now, I was hungry, and that's all I could think about. And I was disconnected from my future self. And you can start to see how this is going to impact our decisions and what we do. And temporal or delayed discounting really just means that future rewards have less meaning to rewards right now. It's the classic marshmallow and kids scenario where they say to a young kid, hey, do you want 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows in like 20 minutes? That reward has less meaning than that 1 marshmallow right now. Doesn't matter if I get 2 in 20 minutes. That time seems so far from now, and that reward is so little and meaningless, I will take the marshmallow right now. That is temporal or delayed discounting. So I should have thought to myself, if I have this sushi, how terrible will I feel for the next week? Should I feel like this while I'm presenting in front of people? Probably not. Too late, I ate the sushi. These next pictures are from a book called ADHD, Life Without Breaks, and it gives a really good idea of what now versus not now is like. So this is now. This is what Jack sees. And, oh my God, I caught a fish. This is so exciting. Look how big it is. This is unreal. I caught a fish. This is amazing. I'm the best fisherman ever. Cannot wait. This is what everybody else sees. And I cannot tell you how embarrassingly true that is. I have no clue that there's a waterfall coming in like 2 seconds. All I care about is this fish is amazing. And I'm so proud and so happy. And then 2 seconds later, look what happens. And that is embarrassingly true, even for myself. What's this slide? Oh, yeah. This is something that's big, and ADHD has absolutely nothing nothing to do with your intelligence. It affects your intelligence in no way. What it does affect is how people perceive your intelligence. Because again, what you're able to produce, what you're able to show, what you know, if that's impaired by the learning that you're in, if you're in a classroom or the situation that you're in, if you're not able to get that out, you don't get to show what you truly know. And that, I can't tell you how devastatingly frustrating that is, to be able to be like, I know what I need to do, but I cannot do it. And if you don't understand that, if you don't know why you're not able to do that, the negative self-talk is going to take over. You're going to feel like an idiot. You're going to feel like a moron. And you're just going to be frustrated at life. There's research now coming out saying that people with ADHD experience life more intensely. And again, I cannot tell you how true this is. They're saying that our threshold for external stimuli is much lower than everybody else's. So people without ADHD, your threshold's up here, our threshold's down here, meaning that our cup is filled up way faster than yours. And again, if we think about that, our expectation of what's full is up here, and then you see us overwhelmed, freaking out, or having a meltdown or whatever. But to you, you're like, why are you freaking out? You've got like nothing on your plate. Doesn't matter. Our threshold is lower. We can handle and manage less. But I do this group coaching course. I have it tonight, actually. It's going to be exhausting. And we were talking about boredom last week, and there was a slide, and I got to talk to these youth about how, I can feel boredom. Boredom has a physical, sickening feeling to me. And this is what we mean by people with ADHD feel life more intensely. The emotions, they're so physical, and they can actually physically hurt us. It's unreal. And that's why, we say we technically have to manage more because our threshold is often met. And then because we internalize a lot more, there's a lot more depression, there's a lot more anxiety that comes with ADHD too. So it's important to realize this when you see someone being overwhelmed or having a hard time with ADHD, their cup is already full, even if it doesn't seem like it, because your threshold is much higher than ours. ADHD is also highly genetic. The research is saying it's if you're a parent with ADHD, you have a 1/3 to a 0.5% chance of giving it to your kids. So my kids have about a 50% chance of getting ADHD. Sorry, kids. I got it from my dad, so it's not my fault. But with this, working with students, I'm working with them, and then, I'm talking about ADHD, and the parents go, oh my God, you're talking about me. Well, the likelihood of you having it is pretty high. So it's important to realize that ADHD can run through families. It can also skip generations, and just because a kid has ADHD does not mean the parent has it, but the chances are much higher. So Dr. Len Adler suggests that 75% of people with ADHD don't know they have it. That is absolutely terrifying. So if you think, this is how my brain works, especially with numbers, if there were 100 people in this room, and this was the ADHD population, 75 people wouldn't know that they had it. That's unreal. So not only is this population dealing with all of this ADHD stuff, they don't know why. And they're just thinking that they're an idiot, and that they can't manage life, and that they're not going to go anywhere and be able to do anything with their life. Yeah. There is a question period at the end if you're able to hold on. Sorry, I just want to thank you. I just want to make sure I get through everything, but I'm happy to take your questions. And then William Dodson estimates that children with ADHD receive a full 20,000 more negative messages by age 10 on average. Again, not surprising. And you wonder why people with ADHD struggle with mental health challenges. By the age of 10, they're having 20,000 more negative messages than their neurotypical peers. Because people don't understand about their neurology. They think they're acting out. They think they're being bad kids. They're misbehaving. And they are being aggressive because they're frustrated with themselves. Because they don't know why they're being like this. So with ADHD, there is a developmental delay in ADHD. This is a picture taken from my coaching course. They estimate that there's about a 30% or 3 to 5 year developmental delay. Now, this is not across the board. It can affect just one area of the brain. But that's why we see, young kids who, are old souls and can carry a conversation with an adult and then, turn around and be super immature because they might be delayed in that area, right? And I think when we realize this, if we're working with someone who's a chronological age of 16, their ADHD delay in some aspects of their brain could be to an 11-year-old. That's a significant difference. And you would treat that person, you would use different strategies with that kid. It's kind of funny, there's one of these that goes older, and between 30 and 35, I'm around about 21 and a half. And that sushi I went to, that was with 2 19-year-olds and a 20-year-old. And I'm not even kidding you, the 19-year-old's like, this is why we like hanging out with you, Aaron, because you don't act like you're old. Thanks, man. But it's true. Maybe my maturity is at a 21-year-old. I don't know what that says about my wife who married me, but it's not a lot of people know about this, right? And that's going to affect how they act, how they behave, the decisions that they make. And if we knew about this, we would have different strategies and stuff to implement with them and actually get to what neurological age they're at. So executive functioning, we hear about executive functioning skills all the time, but what does it actually really mean? So Russell Barkley describes executive functioning as the cognitive process that organizes thoughts and activities, prioritizes tasks, and manages time efficiently and makes decisions. So essentially, what it is it's to pick a goal, create steps towards to fulfill that goal, and then achieving that goal. I don't think we realize how much we use executive functioning skills every single day. You get up in the morning, you have to brush your teeth, you have to make breakfast, you have to get ready to go for work. That's a ton of mini goals. That's a ton of mini goals. That's very, very hard to do. I'm in the process of making a visual calendar because there are 3 things that I cannot, for the life of me, remember what to do. And it's brush my teeth, eat breakfast, and take my meds. I forget at least one of them every day. I did them all this morning. But that takes a ton of executive functioning skills. And if we're struggling with them, again, that's going to affect how we behave and the decisions that we make. And this is just a visual that Thomas Brown uses. He chunks executive functionings up into 6 different groups, and he suggests that people with ADHD either struggle with one or all of these aspects. So he breaks them up into activation, which is organizing, prioritizing, and activating to work, and then focusing and shifting attention to tasks. And then he breaks up into effort, which is regulating attention, sustained effort, and processing speed. And then emotions, managing frustrations and modulating emotions, all the way down to memory, which is utilizing working memory and accessing recall. Working memory is the ability to learn something, put it to the side, and then in a couple minutes grab it back and put that information that you just learned to the test. My working memory sucks. And then actions, monitoring action and regulating behavior. I like this model because if you can pinpoint where your client or whomever you're working with is struggling, then you can come up with specific and actionable strategies to be like, okay, you're struggling with task initiation or task activation for these certain tasks. What can we do to help that? And what's going on? Are you not interested in it? Is it too much? Is it too overwhelming? Because when we do the now and not now, we see everything all at once. We don't break it up into small tasks. We see everything and go, oh my God, this is too much to do, and our amygdala goes, nope, fires off, and we avoid it. So I really enjoy this model. Oh, circle of depression, we're already there, holy moly. This is just a small graphic that I came up with talking about my circle of depression that I deal with. So it always starts off with my ADHD because it's kind of the main thing. I have ADHD, oh my God, I can't focus. Oh, I forgot to do this. Man, how am I going to function in life? This is really hard. And then I also have a learning disability in math. I'm like, oh, I hate numbers. How am I supposed to pay bills? I can barely, I finally just learned how to tell time. This is embarrassing. My learning disability sucks. Oh my God, I'm anxious. How am I ever going to survive life? I somehow made it to 32 years of age. How am I going to do another 32 years? I can't do this. This is intense. This is too much. Oh my God, now COVID's here and the pandemic and all this and the war and everything going on. And then I'm depressed. And this circle of depression can happen in months, can happen in weeks, can happen in days, can happen in hours. And it's really humbling to look at this and know that I'm going to have to struggle with this my entire life. And sometimes I don't even need a learning disability. It goes straight from anxiety to ADHD to anxiety. Sometimes I don't even need anxiety. That arrow from depression should be back and forth. Sometimes they just like to play catch together. But this can happen. You know, once my... Do you have a question? LD, learning disability. LD. Sorry, I should have a period in there. Thank you for that awareness. LD. Yeah, you know, this happened after my kids left. You know, shocker, my identity's been, for the last 4 years, as a husband and a father, and that left in an instant. And the first 2 weeks when they were gone, I just had a significant crash. And, you know, I would go through this cycle almost every day. I feel really good, and then I feel like shit. And I feel really good, and I feel bad. And because of my awareness of this, I was able to catch it and get the help that I needed. Okay. So now I'm going to bring up some facts for you that go into mental health, and I think it's really important to be aware of these, and then we get really the full impact on ADHD. So ADHD and comorbidities. Comorbidities, it's just a fancy word for having another disability with ADHD. Okay. So Dr. Larry Silver suggests that 50% of people with ADHD suffer from one or more additional disorder. 50%. That's significant. And some of the most common comorbidities associated with ADHD are depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and a learning disability. So I'm 3 for 6. That's not too bad. Excuse me. It's important to know too, with oppositional defiant disorder, that can lead into conduct disorder, which has much more significant, not complications. What's the word I'm looking for? It can lead to other significant issues as well. But you're starting to see the complexity of ADHD. It generally isn't just ADHD. 50% of people have something else, and they feed into each other. Anxiety and ADHD and depression are like what I say are frenemies. They're the worst friends and the best enemies. You know, they come kind of hand in hand with each other, and it's awful. It's just awful. And you can see how this is going to affect our mental health and take a toll on us and on the system. ADHD and mental health. So I just want to focus on addiction too. So according to the American Addiction Center, 21% of boys and men with ADHD will abuse alcohol and drugs. And along that line, 13% of girls and women with ADHD abuse alcohol and drugs. And I have to be aware of my own. You know, I have a family history of addiction. I have an addictive personality, I know that. I have to be very, very aware of my cannabis use and my alcohol use, because I know how easy it would be for me to slip in there. I know how easy it is. I can't have bloody screens in my house. I grew up on video games. I embarrassingly love them. I can't have them in my house because that is all I'll want to do. And it takes over because it's constant stimulation, right? And think about that too. One of the main reasons I use cannabis is to give my brain a break. It's just constant. And I just want to break from my thoughts. And you can easily see why people slip into addiction and go for drugs, because it's just a relief from the constant. And imagine again, if you're the 75% who don't know you have this, you don't know you have ADHD, you don't know you're at a higher risk of addiction. Of course you're going to get into this. It just makes sense. And we're looking for that stimulation too, right? And unfortunately, drugs give that stimulation. But what happens is that we want that first, when you first take whatever you're taking, it can feel really good, and we want that same high, and we never get it. And so we keep looking for it. Or if you start, abusing cannabis and it's the same high every time, it's less exciting, it's less stimulating, so you want something more. Or you do something crazier while you're on it. It's going to lead down, it has the possibility to lead down this really dangerous path. Also, approximately 25% of adults that go to a treatment center for alcohol and substance abuse also live with ADHD. 25%. Pretty significant. So criminal involvement. According to CHADD, which is the Child and Adolescent Adhd, oh my God, I'm slipping on it. It's in the States. But according to it in 2017, men with childhood ADHD have a 2 to 3 times greater risk of being arrested, convicted, or incarcerated in adulthood. Again, not surprising if you have impulsive issues and you're doing things without thinking. And according to Young in 2015, 33% of inmates in Canada have ADHD. And remember, 75% of people don't know they have it, so it's probably bigger than that. And I know there are studies in the States, depending on the states that you're at, the inmate population can be anywhere from 25% to 65% of people with ADHD. So it is a significant issue, and if we're not dealing with it, they're unaware of it, they're doing these exciting things that are stimulating their brain because their brain's craving it. Oh, this is a hard slide for me, I'll be honest with you. This was a study done in 2020 in Canada called The Dark Side of ADHD, Factors Associated with Suicide Attempts Among Those with ADHD. Yeah, this slide sucks. So, 1 in 7 people will attempt suicide compared to 1 in 37 without ADHD. And they even broke this down into genders. So 23.5% of ADHD women attempted suicide compared to 3.3% of women without. That is a significant jump. And that's not surprising to me either because women are highly underdiagnosed and later diagnosed. I'd say 60 to 70% of my clientele are middle-aged women who are just finding out that they're diagnosed ADHD. And then there's so much grief of what feels like a life lost. I have a 60-year-old client who just found out. It's tears every single session. And then 8.5% of ADHD men attempt suicide compared to 2.1% of men without ADHD. So we are losing the ADHD population because they're unaware of it. And the immense guilt, the immense shame associated with it is overbearing and can be too much to handle. Also, as a parent who has 2 little girls, knowing that they are at higher risk to have ADHD, this stat scares the living shit out of me. And my hope is that something changes by the time they're in their teenage years around the help and the awareness of ADHD. Oh, this is another fun study. So they looked at the life expectancy of ADHD, and they were able to use an insurance company's life expectancy calculator. And they found that Barkley and Fisher in 2019 found that untreated ADHD-C, which is combined, which is what I have, that persisted into adulthood led to at least a 13-year reduction in estimated life expectancy. 13 years untreated ADHD combination type can take off your life. And they looked and they found 14 variables were found to increase the estimated, I think that was supposed to say decrease, increase the estimated life expectancy, such as weight, so being overweight, bad sleep, diet, smoking, and alcohol consumption, which we are all at higher risks of. And so really, this can take anywhere from 13 up to 22 years off your life by having untreated ADHD. The scary thing is nobody's talking about this. This is huge. Nobody's talking about it because nobody is aware of the significant disorder that ADHD is and the massive mental health impact that comes along with it. To bring some hope and lightheartedness to this conversation, they did find that a multimodal approach of medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT, and adult ADHD life coaching can help reduce the number, or my math gets confusing here. I don't know if it's increase or reduces, but it can reduce the number of, it can take 13, go to 12, 11, 10, whatever that is. So there are ways that we can deal with this to increase the life expectancy of people with untreated ADHD. This was actually just out of nowhere. I was actually really, really interested after learning all these stats. What's the economic burden or impact of ADHD? And again, Chad in 2019 did a big article, and they found. So this was based in the States. So these are numbers from the States. But they found that the annual cost of ADHD in 2012 is in the range of $143 to $266 billion. So not only are we losing our people with ADHD, it is costing the economy an immense amount of money by not acknowledging and not knowing about ADHD. Within this research, they actually broke it down into how much a child with ADHD costs as well. And they estimated the cost for mental health school services, and the juvenile justice system to be $40,000 per child with ADHD. And that increases if the child has a conduct disorder. And we know oppositional defiant disorder is one of the most common with ADHD, and that can increase the likelihood of conduct disorder. So $40,000 per child with ADHD, and that increases to $80,000 if there's a conduct disorder. And I didn't include this here, but they said treatment, and I couldn't find within the paper what treatment meant, but they said that treatment for ADHD is in the range of $41,000 and $666 per person. And so they looked at that and said there's a cost-benefit ratio of 7 to 1 if we finally started treating and understanding ADHD for what it is. That would have a huge impact on our economy. So now what? First of all, that was heavy. I understand that. That was a lot. And I think the most important thing to remember is that Barkley and Fisher, what they said, is that if we can get medication, CBT therapy, and adult ADHD coaching, that can significantly help reduce ADHD symptoms. It can increase, I guess, the life expectancy of people with untreated ADHD. It can help so much. So there is hope. There are things we can do. We just need to be aware about it now. Okay? And so, I mean, from my perspective, and I know I'm going to say this like it's all easy peasy lemon squeezy, and I know it's not, but I mean, we need more assessments. And this is not a Yukon issue. This is a nationwide issue. We simply need more assessments. I have clients who were supposed to get an assessment done in grade 8. They didn't get it done in grade 12. That's unacceptable. That can't be happening. So that student went out throughout high school not receiving any accommodations that they inherently have the right to as a Canadian with a disability. Yeah, and I know it's easier said than done, but we need more assessments here. We need more ADHD education and awareness for youth, parents, educators, and mental health workers. If we can understand what ADHD is and actually offer strategies and ways to incorporate this learning into their daily life, I mean, how empowering would that be? To teach someone about their brain and be like, holy shit, this is how I work? I can actually do stuff, I can actually function, that is so empowering. And unfortunately, it's not happening until later in adulthood, or they're not even realizing it. Or they go down this dark road and they don't get to that point. And then we also need ADHD-specific skill-based programs. You know, I've had people contact me and say, you know, my clients are getting medication, which is great. However, that medication's not working well, so they've just thrown it out, they're not using it, and they're back to square one. But again, remember, pills don't equal skills. So just because you're on medication doesn't mean everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to be fine, right? Pills give you that extra couple minutes or whatever so that you can actually focus and sustain that attention on something. But if you're not learning about your brain and coming up with individualistic strategies to help that person in that situation, what's it going to do? It only can go so far. I'm being asked to run, you know, group coaching sessions for people in certain organizations because that's what's happening. They're getting the medication and nothing else. There is no skill-based programming anywhere. I'm trying to get myself in the school systems to work with kids and work with teachers to finally understand ADHD so that they don't grow up like I did thinking that I'm a, sorry for my language, fucking idiot. You know? If I can reach kids and tell them, hey, you're not stupid. This is actually what's happening with your brain, and then work with the teacher to incorporate strategies with that, that's going to help out so much. And even having adults together, you know, I'm putting on this ADHD fish-like hike this Saturday because I don't have enough on my plate already. But I just want to get people together so they don't feel alone and they can feel connected and that feel like they're a part of something. And I think Yukon is in a really, really unique place right here. We're a relatively small territory, and not to, you know, boost my own ego or anything like that, but Yukon has somebody who is dedicated, who is passionate about helping people with ADHD and moving forward in this. You know, this isn't just my passion, this is my life. Getting emotional. Shit. You know, this isn't something that I just do for fun. I don't want anybody going through what I did, and it's still happening. You know, when I look back at my school years over 15 years ago, not much has changed. Kids are still feeling like this. People are still feeling like this. And it's not okay. So if you work here in the Yukon, use and abuse me. Please. You know, I think we're in this really unique place where we could have a significant impact on our ADHD population and reduce the mental health challenges, reduce the strain on the services that we inevitably are putting on, you know. Because I just hope that now is the time that we can actually recognize ADHD for what it is, which is a significant neurodevelopmental disorder with massive mental health implications. Nailed the time. There's 10 minutes left for questions. I know you had a question.
Oh my gosh. I got a big voice. Okay, well, you answered most of my questions, but what I wanted to know is that, like, do you have to have medication through your life for this to, like, keep you normal?
That depends on the specific case. I know people who love their medication so much and they thrive on it and they will have it for their entire life. And I know people who refuse to take the medication. But if you do refuse to use the medication, you need to have, again, the strategies in place to deal with it and be aware of what's coming. You know, I went off my medication when I was 21, and I didn't realize how ADHD I was until I went off of it. But I had my strategies in place that I was able to maintain and the routine. And because of that routine, I was able to stay off my meds for almost a decade. And then it was when my kids came and life got a bit more hectic that I couldn't deal. So I can't, it's not a yes or no question. It depends on the individual.
Okay. Okay, a person who is chemically dependent or on drugs or alcohol, don't know that they have this ADHD, and say they're like maybe 50, 60 years old, and then find out. So what difference does it make?
What difference does it make? Again, I think that depends on the person, but it gives them an answer to their life.
Okay.
To why they've been making either these not great decisions or why they've been seeking out this thrill-seeking behavior, because their brain is racing for it. Their brain is searching for this dopamine, and you can get it elsewhere, right? It empowers them. In a way, I've had some clients say it kind of gives them their life back because they can feel like they're in charge. Because with ADHD, you often feel like you're out of control and that you can't do anything. You're at the whim of these bad decisions. But if you can be aware of what's going on and know that you're not making these decisions because you're a bad person, you're making them because your brain is actively looking for stimulation, and it's about finding that healthy stimuli.
Well, it's a tough thing to have because, you could use that negatively and positively.
Absolutely.
You could be causing trouble for some person, and then you just use that, well, I have ADHD. That's my excuse, and that's why I did it.
Right, and I know as a youth, I hate saying this, I definitely used it as an excuse too. I said, I'm allowed to do this, I have ADHD, which is it's nonsense. It's not an excuse for your behavior, but it's an answer to why you're going in these directions, right? And if there's probably a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a big self-defense wall up. In my practice, there's a lot of trying to break down these false beliefs that they hold about themselves, and this huge defense wall. Why wouldn't you have it up, right? If you go into a school system that's not designed for people with ADHD, and you're made to feel like an idiot, and your weaknesses are just portrayed all the time, because school focuses on processing speed and working memory, which we struggle in. That is essentially what education looks at: is your processing speed, so how fast you can process and dissect information. And then your working memory, how much you can learn and then hold and then recall. We're bad at that. So of course you're going to have a defense wall, but if you can work with someone and break those down, and that's going to take time with someone at that age who has probably a big defense wall up and is unfortunately using these drugs. Yeah, I think it gives them a lot. It gives them an answer to why they've been searching out these things for so long, and what it gives them,
So when they were born, they would have a chemical deficiency, is that?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, you were born chemically deficient, and that's it. And it's about changing those neural pathways, right?
The food you eat or what?
No, it's not about the food you eat. They are saying there are environmental factors, but it's mainly genetic, and it's just a deficiency in neurochemicals. We haven't figured out why people get ADHD yet. They're looking at environmental factors, they're looking at genetics, they're looking at a bunch of stuff, but sometimes it's the way you were born and about change, because we used to see the brain as something that once you are who you are, that's it. But the brain is much more malleable than we thought, and you can change your neural pathways. It takes time and it takes work, but you can change the way that your brain is wired. That's why they were talking about cognitive behavioral therapy and ADHD coaching, getting that ADHD knowledge, understanding what's going on, and then coming up with strategies that you put in place to change those neural pathways and go down, say, healthier roads.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add to that too. Like I fall in that little stage where I'm 26 now. I was recently diagnosed like about 2 years ago. I recently started medication, and it's like been a life changer. And I did want to ask though, if you offer services for young professionals that do have ADHD in like communication or like just like kind of speaking to people, like, for example, I'm going to COP27 and I am really anxious about meeting a lot of people and, you know, effectively communicating what's on my brain versus like my excitement and everything, you know, that I'm definitely going to, you know, kind of be more vocal probably about. So I'm wondering if there's like you offer services or training or something like that for even youth with ADHD so that they can kind of continue in their career and feel successful and like, I guess, brave or confident in what they can do and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, congratulations going there. That's very exciting for you. That's awesome. Absolutely, I offer services to anybody with ADHD and non-ADHD too. I helped someone do a presentation in Saskatchewan once, and I haven't seen her since. So yeah, I can help with anything, and it's again breaking down those barriers, right? About wanting to show truly who you are and what you're capable of. Absolutely, yeah, I can, and yeah, I do in person and online to try and get as many people as I possibly can, but yeah.
Okay. Do you also do like services in remote communities, for example?
I would love to. As of right now, it's difficult with my two little kids because I do want to be a present parent and a present husband. But that is, you know, I would love to. Yeah. I don't know if that could be virtually or go there, but I would absolutely love to because I understand that, you know, communities need these services as well, and I would love to be able to provide that. But I'm working towards that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I'd love
you.
to do that. Oh, no problem. That guy's got a mic, and then.
There we go. Yeah, I got it. A quick question, more related to your personal experience. I've been diagnosed with ADHD since I was in grade 4. Suicidal ideation when I was a child, kind of grew out of it, not grew out of it, but learned how to process it, get through it, all that fun stuff. One of the things that I've struggled with is not necessarily, I'm ambivalent about medication. So I kind of go back and forth. I've experienced it where it hasn't necessarily done much for me, but the fear that I have to actually try it for a long term is if you were to come back off of it, do your symptoms get worse? Do they heighten, like when you come off the medication?
That's a really good question and an interesting one. I don't necessarily know if they would heighten, but I can absolutely see why you would feel like they were heightened, because if you have been taking medication, which would be reducing your symptoms, and then you go off of it, it's like when I went off my meds, I didn't realize how ADHD I was. I don't think my symptoms were worse. I had just been, you know, at this level for so long, and then I went off and I was like, oh my God, I'm down here. So I don't know if they technically heighten, but it's the feeling of them being worse because maybe you've been on them for a while. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Sure. I just know this. Did she get a mic? Oh no, you can.
Just personally, I've, like, as a female, misdiagnosed so many different times. Oh, you have this. Oh, actually, you have this. Oh, actually, you have multiple personality disorder. Actually, you're depressed. Actually, you have... And so I've been on all sorts of different medication, and every different medication that I've been on has been a little window into, oh, you could work on this piece over here. And then when I quit it, I come back to, I'm a multi-functioning, like skill tasking. I can do all the things. I just never get anything done. But each medication has shown me a little window into, oh, I don't think that I actually have the thing that I've been diagnosed with. But in that window of medication, oh, there's another thing that I can work on and bring back into my consciousness of, okay, I'm going to keep myself going. And my medication is to be outside, to connect with the land, which I've learned in the Yukon, so incredible.
Yep.
And just to keep moving. I have to be active. If I'm not active, suicide's a really big option. Mm-hmm. Terrible.
And that's you self-medicating yourself by going out in nature and by exercising. I recently wrote an article in WhatsApp about the power of nature, and specifically with ADHD, and how it can help. And for one, I'm sorry to hear about all your misdiagnoses, because that must have been exhausting. Yeah,
Still.
but you've so an example there, right? Going out on the land, exercising. So before I went back on meds, I was exercising daily, doing yoga every day. I was meditating 10 minutes at night, and I was keeping a happy journal doing a happy journal every night. I couldn't maintain that once I had kids, surprise, and that's when my symptoms got worse. And then I had a second kid, and then, oh my God. Once I couldn't do those strategies anymore, I had to go back on the medication. So again, depending on the person, finding whatever self-medication, hopefully healthy self-medication works for you, right? Yeah, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome, and I don't recommend a pandemic for ADHD. It's not a good idea.
Seriously. Yeah.
Because you said the brain is underactive, can you, like, I assume stimulants would be more appealing choice as a substance, but can you explain what would be the effect of a depressant like alcohol on a brain with ADHD?
Oh, that's a really good question, and one I'm not sure I can entirely answer, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to think about my college days and drinking, because that's I don't know. I wouldn't know the neurology of how alcohol affects a brain with ADHD. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, from my, I don't know. That's a really good question, because I remember. So I had to stop drinking once because every time I drank, I would be depressed for like the next week, and so I don't entirely. I mean, I was struggling with my health in that time frame, so I don't know if that, because it is a depressant, I don't know if that just enhanced what I was feeling. But I can tell you, like, at least I had the self-awareness to be like, I can't, and I was like, 21, primetime college, hanging out, but I was DD, it worked out for them. But I don't know, I can't give you that information, unfortunately, sorry.
It's all good. Thanks.
What time is it? Any more questions? Yep.
Last one, and I think we're about to have an influx of people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the ADHD it sounds pretty similar to
Fetal alcohol syndrome? FASD?
syndrome that affects.
Oh, the effects, the symptoms.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the issue with the effects is that ADHD, if you have a bad sleep, your inattention is going to be bad. If you're stressed out, you're going to have a harder time focusing. There are disorders that they can kind of overlap. But I think when you look at the psychologists and what they say, the biggest thing about ADHD is the nervous system, is that kind of executive functioning skills, and how that affects us. But I mean, I do know FASD and ADHD are vastly different disorders, but some symptoms are going to overlap with other disorders, but they are distinctly different. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, that was the last question, I believe. Oh, yeah. Sorry, didn't see you.
In a program that I'm in, I think there's like a balance, not a balance, but just we're witnessing a lot of folks who are being diagnosed right now, especially like for women like later in years, like closer to my age. But one thing I know that's happening with Indigenous communities is there is this overdiagnosis just for a range of reasons as well, because with trauma,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities if it was early in life, right?
Yeah.
Like you're coping, you're in survival mode. So it's really complex up here, but not to undermine, like because it's something that I'm talking about in therapy. Right? They're talking about like maybe you are on ADHD as well, and I keep coming back, I'm like, or is it trauma?
Yeah.
Because I was traumatized as a child. Right? So, and where it's more complex, where trauma is intergenerational, it's so hard to diagnose. So I came in on a slide where you're like assessments. I was like, I think a lot more awareness and assessments. Just thank you for being here to introduce, because I don't think it's been talked a lot about, especially growing up.
Absolutely.
There's such a it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. But
Absolutely.
right now, for many Indigenous communities, especially remote, especially isolated, especially away from health centers,
Yep.
with proper,
Yeah.
not proper, but individuals with who's a psychiatrist, you need the diagnosis from.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big gap and challenge.
And I mean, thank you for bringing that up. I was literally talking to someone about this the other day, about trauma and ADHD, and again, how much they overlap, and that assessments kind of can miss that trauma and overlook it. And I think I've totally lost my train of thought. Oh my God. Seriously, ADHD moment, right? I'm so sorry. Trauma, ADHD, oh my God, Bailey, come on. misdiagnosis. It's gone. I'm going to come find you. I'm so sorry. I have totally lost my train of thought. My, my apologies. Thank you all for taking the time to be here with me today. I appreciate that.